It seems like it's 4 p.m. for the majority.
Yes.
I wonder what countries or time zone well it would be.
Yeah.
But
If you want to let Fatima know what country you're from or what time zone you are in, feel free to let her know in the chat.
Egypt, nice. Fellow North Africans. Cool, cool, cool. A lot of diversity to our students today. That is awesome, everyone.
We see Ireland.
Hello.
Very nice. Okay, so as the last of the people join, I'm going to go ahead and give it over to Fatima. So Fatima, feel free to introduce yourself. She's our guest speaker today. She's super excited to talk to all of you, and I'll go ahead and let her get started. A reminder that if you have questions, please save them for the end of the session, and you can use the chat or you can raise your hand.
Awesome. Thank you, Davina, for the introduction. I will go ahead and share my screen. One second. Can you guys see it? Perfect. All right, everyone. It's super nice to meet you. My name is Fatima Zora Kimisi. I go by Fachi. I'm from Rabat, Morocco. So fellow North Africans here. I did my high school in Morocco, and growing up, I played tennis as a professional sport, and then I decided that I wanted to focus more on academics. So, playing international tennis tournaments, I had the chance to meet a couple of American tennis coaches in different universities, and they offered me full scholarships. And that's how I ended up in the US in the first place. So, being a tennis player is a huge part of my identity. And so, I got my high school degree at 17 and I moved to the US and did my undergrad in cell molecular biology, and I minored in chemistry. I knew I wanted to do pre-med in high school. And so that is why I chose this particular major, because it covered some of the most all of the prereq classes for medical school. And it also prepares you really well for the MCAT and things like that. And as soon as I graduated, I took actually 2 gap years to do research at WashU in St. Louis. The reason why I took these 2 gap years is because I wasn't sure if I wanted to pursue my MD or my MD PhD. So I was hesitating between the two programs, which are very different. We can talk more about the differences later. But at the end, I really enjoyed my time at research, and I decided to pursue my MD only because there's other options. You can still be a physician scientist with your MD, and you don't have to get a PhD as well. And then for medical school, I'm currently a second-year student, medical student at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And we're actually going to start school back up in about 2 weeks. So very exciting. Okay, if you have questions as I'm talking, feel free to write in the chat. Otherwise, I do have a slide at the end where you can ask me questions then. So we can leave the questions until the end, actually. And so, okay, medical school in the US is very challenging for internationals to be accepted. Now, what is the definition of an international student? An international student, per the AAMC, is a student who's on an F1 or a J1 visa status. So in my case, it would be an F1 student visa status. So that is the visa that I received when I moved to the US to finish my undergrad here, and also the same visa that you apply for medical school. So it is very, very challenging, of course, to get admitted as an international student in the US. However, it's very possible. I'm right here telling, like, if I did it, anybody can do it. We have a wonderful mentorship program that I will talk about as well in our session today. But in summary, how to stand out as an international student. First of all, you're already bringing in a diverse perspective. Okay, so you're from a different country, you have a different culture. Already, that's really good. Okay, that's very, very positive. Second of all, most likely you left your comfort zone in your country to move somewhere else. That also shows a lot of qualities. You know, you're a go-getter, you want to explore the world, you want to do something different. Okay, in terms of who you are as a person, you're already standing out as an international student. And so the most important things that you do is make sure there's absolutely no red flags. And then for the extracurricular activities, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, those are very important as well, because you need to have a story of why you want to become a doctor, and you have to deliver it in a very clear way in your application. So that's the goal. So in terms of extracurricular activities, first of all, it's important to have a long-term commitment. For example, if I volunteer for this specific type of organization, okay, instead of making it a one-time or a two-time thing, it's better if you actually keep a nice relationship with this organization and keep volunteering over a long period of time. And so, being a pre-med is already challenging. You're taking difficult classes, you're international student, which means you are trying to adjust to this new environment. So all of those things are already challenging. Um, so it's really, really important to, instead of volunteering one or twice at a time, find a organization that fits what you're passionate about and volunteer over a year or two or even more. Okay, and make it, it has to be a meaningful experiences. So one of the things that applications or the admissions office filter or use to filter our students is if it looks like they're checking boxes. What does that mean? As a pre-medical student, there's a lot of applicants that actually are like, okay, I've done my clinical, I've done my research experiences, and they're hopping from one volunteering activity to the next or from one student organization to the next for very short periods of times. Those are red flags. Those do not, it doesn't communicate as a meaningful experience. So whoever's reading your application is going to be like, oh, this person is just doing this so that it looks good on their application. And so this is why it's important that before you apply for medical school, you know why you're applying for medical school. Why is it that you want to be a doctor? Because you have to communicate all of these things on your application. Okay, so it's really important not to be checking boxes as a pre-medical student. And I'll give you an example. For example, I decided, well, this is just an example, it's not really the truth, but say somebody decided to go to medical school because one of their grandparents had Alzheimer's disease and that really affected them as a child. And they just grew curious and curious about this disease. And they grew a passion for biology or science, chemistry in general. And, in terms of like career options, they were like, they shadowed at the hospital and then they were like, okay, I want to become a physician. So you really have to be really good at communicating why you want to be a physician. And that goes into your personal statement and your activities. Now, if this applicant, their first exposure to medicine was through their grandpa, for example, getting Alzheimer's, then what you can do, if that's what you're really passionate about and that's the reason why you want to go into medicine, what you can do is volunteer at a center for, I don't know, Alzheimer's disease. When you're doing research, do something related to neurology, something with Alzheimer's. So everything that you do needs to align that mission of why you want to be a doctor. And in terms of, volunteering, research, clinical experiences, everything needs to revolve around a certain theme is what I'm trying to communicate. So whoever is reading your application needs to see a theme. Okay, it doesn't need to look like you're doing one thing just to do it. You're doing this thing just so you can have these hours, if that makes sense, and that it looks good. So it brings me to the next thing, storytelling. Now, a lot of applicants have a misconception of, oh, I need to do this activity that's going to look really, really good in my application. Okay. We all know that in life, we get different opportunities than others. And so, what admissions really care about is not really the type of activity that you're doing, but what you've learned from it. What are the challenges that you have stumbled upon? And then, how did you overcome those challenges? How are you talking about that specific activity? So, what perspective, if any, did you gain from this activity? So storytelling is very important, especially in your activities and your personal statement. Now, I'm really emphasizing activities as well because a lot of students put all of their efforts into their personal statement and they don't put as much effort in their activities. And it doesn't look like they put any effort. And so that looks really bad. So it's really important. I just want to emphasize that both your personal statement and activities matter, especially those meaningful experiences in your activities sections, which I will talk more into details as we go. But yes, storytelling is very important. Like I said, it doesn't matter what activity you've done. What matters is what you learned from it and what perspective have you gained from it and how can you apply what you learned to other things in your life. So yeah, so how did you overcome these challenges in terms of, let's be honest, as medical students, as undergraduate students in the US, most pre-meds, what they do is they get a job at the hospital, like a scribe or a patient care assistant or something like that. Now, when you're on an international visa, you cannot work off campus. That's against the rule. You can only work on campus. So, how do you find these clinical and research opportunities? So, I'm going to be writing in the chat a couple of ideas. So, what I did personally is I volunteered for my clinical experiences because I could not work at the hospital off campus. I volunteered at hospice. Hospice is a type of nursing home where there's terminally ill patients. Okay. And so I formed, a relationship with two patients that I would see once a week and I would spend some time with, either, talking about anything or playing games with them or just walking them around. So that's how I got my exposure, like my patient exposure. Okay. It's a volunteer position. So you don't have to be employed by a hospital or anything. And so it falls within the things that you can do on your visa. So let me write that on the chat. That way, if people forget. So here's hospice, volunteering. And another idea is that you can do with your limited opportunities is if, most schools have like a little clinic that students can go to. You can volunteer at your school clinics as well. Volunteer at your school's clinic or pharmacy. So those are all good ways to get that clinical experience with the limitations that we have as international students. In terms of research opportunities, in undergrad, I started doing research my sophomore year. So it's very simple. You go to your school's website and you look at the faculty and what research they're doing. And if something, interests you, just email the teacher and be like, hey, I really want to be, I want to apply to medical school. I really want to be involved in research. Can I please join your lab? Most of the time you're going to get a yes. If you don't get a yes, just send an email to a different faculty person. So that's how you will get your research experience. In terms of like research experiences, you're not technically employed, so you can do it within your visa regulations. So that would be a good way. If you have any other questions as I'm talking, please just write them down in the chat and I can go over them later. Um, Another thing that would make you stand out is having a team mindset. That's really, really important, and how do you show that? So a couple of example is if you're on the board of a student organization, right? You have to collaborate with other students, always you're always interacting with people. And that's important because in healthcare, in healthcare in general, it's a healthcare team. There's not only doctors, there's nurses, there's PCAs, there's PAs, there's AAs, there's a lot of other healthcare providers. And so essentially when you're at the hospital, you're in a team environment. So they want you to thrive in a team environment. That's why you always got to have a team mindset. And in terms of like mentorship, I know when I was applying for medical school or when I moved to the US, I didn't know any international student who got into medical school. So that was very challenging for myself to believe that it's possible. Okay. So I would try to find a mentor as soon as possible, as early as your first year of college. That is very important to look up to someone who's done it before, who made it happen, and that way you can always get good advice from them, and share your journey with them, and it's a very, very productive relationship when you have a mentor mentee. So currently I am the co-executive director of F1 Doctors with Gabby. I know Gabby also gave a talk a few days ago. She's awesome. I will talk more about F1 Doctors and what we do, but that is a very, very good resource to find a mentor. And I will talk more into detail about that. But yes, as a summary of this, it's really important to communicate how you overcome challenges. It's really important to communicate what is your story? Why do you want to be a physician? It's not, oh, because I'm interested in biology. No, it's got to go deeper than that. There's a reason why you want to be a doctor. And then for extracurricular activities, you need to have a certain theme that doesn't make it look like you're only checking boxes. Okay. So this brings me to talking about F1 Doctors. F1 Doctors is a platform for free mentorship. And this is suited for medical school in the US. So this is only for international students, okay? Feel free to go on our website and click on the tab, find mentors. So currently we have 200 mentors, 623 mentees in 53 countries. So we're trying to recruit more mentors for sure to accommodate all of the mentees that we have and all of the new the mentee requests that we have. As it's very challenging because there's not a lot of international students that get into medical school. Actually, if you check on MSAR, there's very, very few that do. And so it's really, really difficult for us to find more mentors. But this is what we're doing right now. We're trying to recruit as many mentors as possible. That way, every mentee that requests a mentor can get one. So it's very easy to use this platform. You're going to click on find mentors on top right here, and you can choose your mentor based on anything that you want. For example, you can choose them based on your country, your specialty, the the medical program. So for example, and we have medical student mentors and doctor mentors, like residents or attending physicians. And so I think for you guys, I would suggest for sure that you have a medical student mentor. For example, first, that way, that mentor can guide you through applying to medical school and really help with all of the questions that you have and assist you the best way possible so you can have a successful application. So I would definitely recommend that. In terms of like how to find a mentor, um, I know when I was applying to medical school, there was no one from Morocco, so I was very, very discouraged. Or there was no one from North Africa in general, no Morocco or Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, nobody from those countries. So it's really hard to believe that you can do something when there's not somebody who looks like you or that represents you that has done it before, right? But now that we have so many more mentors that cover so many more countries. So the odds are that you will find probably somebody from your country who has done it. And it's really nice to connect with someone who's from your own background. You can also choose a mentor based on the medical school that you want to go to, for example. Um, if you want to go to MCW, so where I'm at, the Medical College of Wisconsin, then I could probably give you some advice on your secondary application or things like that. So there's two ways, and we recommend that you get only one mentor, and I think that's the most productive way to do it. Nevertheless, you can always change your mentor, so you're not tied to one person and only. Okay, and you have freedom to choose whoever that you want. So when you click on meet the team and look at the mentors, you can really just choose anybody based on whatever you want. So in terms of application tips, first of all, your MCAT is very important. So one thing to know that when the admissions office they get thousands of applications every year. Okay. The first thing that's going to get them to read your application, or the first thing that they filter out application with, is your statistics, your stats, your MCAT and your GPA. Some schools do that, some schools don't do that. So it's not everybody that does that. But it's really important, if you want to go to a specific school, it's really important to be within their MCAT median. So you would say, okay, so Bachi, how do I know what is the average matriculant score of this school? And so I'm going to write down on the chat. There's this resource that the AMC provides called the MSAR, and that's where you can find, I believe you have to pay a $15 or $20 fee for like access for 1 or 2 years. I don't remember exactly, but in this platform you can find all the schools, all the M.D. schools, and exactly what was the median MCAT score that people who got into that school got. So it's called MSAR. I wrote it down in the chat. So that's a really, really good resource to know. All right, so I want to go to this school, and their MCAT median is around mine, so it's pretty doable. So I'm going to apply to this school. Okay, so that's a very, very nice resource to have. So, like I said, the MCAT is very, very important. You have to take it when you're ready. Okay, I believe that you can take it up to 7 times in your lifetime, and not more than three times a year. But the more you take it, the more it looks bad. So you really need to take it less than like out. This is my suggestion. That nevertheless, like people have gotten it with taking it multiple times. Just my advice, because it's really, as an international student, it's so difficult to get into medical school. That is the truth. People have done it. We've done it, but this is the truth. And we have to accept it, and be very realistic. But take your MCAT when you are ready and only. So take a bunch of practice exams. And once you consistently score the score that you want on your practice exams, then you should take it. But in terms of like MCAT tips, here's what I always tell my students: do not focus more on content review. No, practice questions are the most important thing. So, practice questions and practice exams are literally the key to succeed. Okay. So, I will tell you guys, I will share with you how I studied for the MCAT. So, for those who don't know, the MCAT is the medical admissions test. Okay. So, you have to take it either in your junior year of undergrad or your gap year. So, you can technically take it anytime that you want. So, the traditional applicant will take it the summer of their junior year. And I personally took it, like I said, in my undergrad, I was very busy with playing tennis with the team. So I didn't really have much time to put aside to study for my MCAT. So I took it during my first gap year. So right after I graduated, I took it in January. But yes, so take it when you're ready. Practice questions are very, very important. So the way I studied for it is, so let me talk about generally how people study for it and then how I studied for it. Generally, what people do is buy the Kaplan books, do a lot of content review, and then start practice questions. So people start right away with content review. I suggest to absolutely not do that. So definitely, when you're an undergrad student, you're pre-med, so you've taken the prerequisite classes, so you're familiar with a lot of the physiology, the biochemistry, and then you've taken psychology classes and all, physics and everything that you need to get into med school anyway. So those prerequisite classes, you need to take them, right? And you probably, by the time you take the MCAT, you've probably taken the majority of them, right? Your junior year, you've taken the majority of them. And so you already have a good foundation of those science classes. So why spend your time on content review? So the best way to do this, and what I did, was start practice questions. And then when you get those questions wrong, look at what topic that you don't remember or you don't know that well. And then you can do the content review for that specific topic. And so where can you find practice questions? So on the chat, I'm going to write a lot of the free resources, free MCAT resources, where you can find practice questions literally every day. They're just there for free. So Jack Weston is one that I've used very, very religiously. Jack Weston is a website. If you just Google Jack Weston MCAT, in this website, you're going to find exactly like MCAT style questions. So like in a form of passages. Okay. Let me write, I think, here we go, Jack Weston. Perfect. Yep. So yeah, Jack Weston, they have, at first, Jack Weston used to be very focused on cars only, but then they expanded to all of the MCAT sections. So to reiterate, like, the MCAT has 4 different sections. So it has, first you do chemistry and physics, and then biology, biochem, and then you do cars. Cars is the critical thinking part, where it's a lot of reading and questions. So the second section of the MCAT has nothing to do with science. It's just testing your reading skills. And after cars, we got biology, biochem, and then psych soc. So it's 4 sections, I believe. Each section has an hour and 30 minutes. But yeah, so the way I would do it, like I said, and I will say it again because this is very important, start with practice questions. There's a lot of them online you can find, or also like Exam Crackers has really good books with questions as well in all of the sections. So you can find everything that you want. Start with the question. When you get something wrong, go review that topic. Why did you have to know why you got a question wrong every time. So either keep an Excel document where you're tracking all of these things, and then absolutely review that topic where you got wrong, because the best way to study for this is to identify your weaknesses. Okay. All right. In terms of the best resources, like I said, Jack Weston, Exam Crackers. I found so there's a lot of third-party companies that sell MCAT services. For the practice exams, I actually used Blueprint MCAT. I thought those were the best in terms of, like, they were the closest to the actual exam. So let me write it down. Blueprint MCAT practice exams, I thought, were pretty good. And then, of course, the best resource is straight from the AMC, the people who write the exam. So AMC has practice questions and exams. So for the AMC practice questions on exams, I would leave those until the end to actually test where you're actually at. So I would use all the third-party resources first, okay, and then leave the AMC to about like a month or 6 weeks before your actual exam. Because when you take the practice exams from the source that actually creates these exams, that is the best way to know where you're at, because those are the same people who write the exam. So AMC also has, I believe, 4 practice exams. Yep, for the MCAT. They have a diagnostic one, technically 5, but those 4 I would leave until, like I said, 4 to 6 weeks before your actual exam, so that you know where you're at and where you're scoring exactly. So for MCAT resources, yep, those were the best that I've used and that I know of. And then in terms of gap years, take one if you need to. I always get questions, are gap years, do they look bad? Do they look good? There's no straight answer. They don't look good and they don't look bad. So take a gap year if you need to take a gap year. Again, I felt like I needed to take a gap year to decide if I wanted to do MD program or an MD PhD program. Okay. And then I realized that I can also be an MD and scientist. So you can be a physician scientist. Then the PhD would be an extra 5 years of my education that I thought I would rather be, a physician scientist. So with my MD. So look up all those possibilities, think about, do you want to be a full-time physician working, or do you want to be a physician scientist? So do you want to be in the clinic 80% of the time and 20% research, or do you want to do 80% research and 20% clinical, which then I would suggest to go into an MD PhD program, if that makes sense. So, or do you want to be an academic physician, where you split your time between clinic and teaching classes in a medical school, for example? So there's a lot of options. Just make sure that you can find, or that you know what you want before you apply. And that goes into gap years. You can take as many as you need to. There's not like a certain number of gap years where it looks bad, honestly. Just make sure you're only applying when you're ready, because one, like I said, you don't want to take the MCAT too many times. And then two, applying is actually expensive. So every school that you apply to, that's more money. And so you don't want to have a not a very good application and then apply and spend so much money. So that's why you really want to apply when you're ready. And that brings me to, so now we've covered kind of the background, and then we've covered the MCAT and then the gap years. Personal statement is, for those who don't know, when you get your undergrad degree and take your MCAT, you start applying to medical school. The application is, you write your basic information like your name, your country, your visa, et cetera. And then you have your activities and your personal statement. So your personal statement is basically, I want to say, I don't remember exactly the number of characters, but I think it's about a page or a page and a half, or a little less than that. But either way, your personal statement is basically an essay where you write why you want to be a doctor. Okay, so you'll write your story. This is the moment where I decided, or this is the combination of all these things, and I decided I want to be a physician. Was it a specific type of activity that made you want to explore medicine? And then you solidify that through other activities, so that your personal statement is why you say why you want to be a physician. For your activity sections, I believe you have up to 15 activities. So what is an activity? An activity could be a volunteering experience, it could be research experience, it could be a sport, a hobby, literally anything. Like if you love traveling, you could put that in your activity section, like under hobbies. And there's leadership also, like if you were in a student organization board, or if you held a certain position, you basically write everything that you've been doing, after high school. So during your undergrad and after undergrad. Okay. So activity section, the way it works, so is you get up to 15 activities that you can write about. Okay. I would try to use those, all of them if you can. If you don't have 15 activities, that is fine. I remember I submitted about 12 or 13. So that is not the end of the world. What I really want to communicate to you guys, it's about the quality and not the quantity of the activities that you've done. That's why, like I say, really emphasize on not hopping from one activity to the next, but only do things that are meaningful to you and solidify your passion for medicine. So on your activity section, like I said, yeah, up to 15, you get 3 activities when you can write more. So for each activity, you're supposed to write a description. So this is like a very concise, very small paragraph describing the activity, okay? And then for 3 out of the 15 activities, you can flag them as like your most meaningful experiences, okay? So, and then for the ones that you pick as your most meaningful experience, you have more characters to write. So you have like an extra 1 or 2 paragraphs that you can write about. Okay. So be very, very strategic about which activities you're choosing as your most meaningful because you're writing about it. Now, I see a lot of students waste so much potential in their activity section. Even for the description part, you're supposed to describe the activity, but the odds are out of the thousands of applicants in medical school, the odds is like someone else has done this the exact same thing because it's pre-meds, the activities that we usually do are, very like other people do them as well. Okay. There's nothing special about that activity that you're doing. And so, how to make it special is what is tricky. And like I would say, in your description part of your activities, I would write 1 or 2 sentences maximum about the actual activity. Like I said, most of the activities you can tell what the student has been doing. Okay, there's no need to waste so much time describing a certain activity, but what you can do is, after that 1 or 2 sentences describing a certain activity that you've done, like for example, if you're like I said, if you're in a student org, these were your responsibilities, whether like organizing events, anything, whatever, put it in 1 or 2 sentences. The rest of the description, spend time talking about maybe some things that you failed at and how did you overcome those things, or maybe talk about what perspective have you gained from that activity. So don't spend so much time describing what you've done. It is not very impressive. Like what's gonna make you stand out is what you learn from that activity. Okay, and how what you learn from that activity can be applied to other things in your life or your application, if that makes sense. And then your most meaningful, you should spend, they're as important as your personal statement. So spend a lot of time making sure you're delivering the right things, if that makes sense. Um, don't underestimate your activity section. Every single thing in your application should be very thought of, especially as an international student, because they only take very, very few of us every year. So, and yeah, again, before I move into the interview part, for your personal statement, there's like, I remember when I wrote mine, I had like 8 or 9 drafts. You don't just, sit and write your whole story at once. Like it's practically impossible. So it takes a lot of drafts and a lot of, like showing your friends, do they have any suggestion? Or like showing your professors, do they have any suggestions for you? So make sure you start writing the personal statement at least 3 months before application is due. So usually applications open around June 1st. So 3 months before that, like in March, start writing your personal statement and activities. Do not wait until last second to do that, because those are very important items of your application. Okay. So for interview prep, it's really, really important to practice your interview. Even if you have so many interviews that you think you're going to get in somewhere, like you have to practice your interview, because you can get questions that you would never think you would get on an interview. There's a lot of interview practice online that you can find either like Google or YouTube, and a lot of them are also suited to medical school applications. Like a simple Google search, you can find so many interview tips and other things like that. So make sure you really, really prepare for your interview. And so, in terms of like medical school in general, whether you're international student or not, the whole, they read your application admissions, read your applications first. And if you look good on paper on the interview, you should just not show any red flags, basically. Like if you're good on paper, that means they really liked you. So your interview, that's why I really emphasize to prepare for your interview. Okay. So next, let's go through questions. I know I saw a lot of questions to the chat as I was talking. If you guys have any questions, please write them down in the chat. Okay, so I have a question from Can I give a small word about options after taking medical school in your country? Oh, okay. That's a very good question. So there's different there's different ways that you can do medicine in the US. So the first way is basically what I did is, in the US is different from most countries. You can't go to medical school straight out of high school. Well, there's like a very few programs in the US that do that. And those would be the BS MD programs. Um, but most of like majority, 98% of medical school, you have to get an undergraduate degree. In the U, you have to have your undergrad degree and then go to medical school. And so for your question, if you so that's what I did, undergrad in the US and then applied medical school in the US. For your question, after you go to medical school in your own country. So let's say, for example, if I went to medical school in Morocco, my options are after I graduate medical school in Morocco, or even before that, you have to take your step exam. So USMLE step 1 and step 2, and then apply for residency in the US. So that is also a very, very challenging thing to do. But like I said, international students have done it before. And we have some mentors actually at F1 doctors who have gone through that path of getting their medical school degree in their own countries and then moving to the US for residency. So I would encourage you to reach out to one of them if you have any more questions. Okay. Okay, so in terms of the steps to go to medical school in the US, like I said, so you're gonna get your high school degree from your country, okay? And then you would move to the US to do your undergrad. So you have to get a Bachelor of Science or a bachelor's and then medical school. So basically, you got high school, you got 4 years of undergrad, and you got 4 years of medical school, and then you have 3 to 8 years of residency, depending on what specialty. Okay. So by the time you graduate medical school, that would have been 8 years of higher education. Let's see what other questions we have. Yeah, so like I said, Usama, if you want to be a physician in the US after you've completed your medical school education in your country, then you don't have to take the MCAT. You only have to take your step 1 and step 2 exams. So it's almost as if you're applying like how I would when I graduate from my medical school. So we would all be applying to residency at the same time, whether you finished your medical school in the US or abroad. When can I have, so Adam asked, when can I have a mentor after or before medical school? In terms of, medical school, I would suggest that when you move to the US for your bachelor's degree, to look for a mentor during your freshman year. That way you can build that long-term relationship with them up until you're applying for medical school. And I think that's the best way. Um, is nursing school considered a pre-med? So if I take the bachelor degree from my country, I could apply to the US. So nursing school is not considered anything pre-med, if that makes sense. Oh, I think I know what you mean now, Farha. I don't know because if you complete your bachelor's degree in a different country than the US, I believe that you can still apply to medical school in the US if those prerequisite classes like biology, biochemistry, physics, and all of those that are required for medical school, if your school offers that, but if the US is also accredits that school, if that school is accredited by the US. If I want to participate in medical school, what is the most important, the MCAT or the CAT? I don't know what the CAT is. I'm only familiar with the MCAT, which is the medical's admission test. I wonder if the CAT is for a different country. Okay, let's look at some other questions.
I think we have a few people with their hands up too, if you wanted to call on anyone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One sec.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so let's have Sedra Ibrahim.
Hi,
Yeah. Hello.
thank you for your talk so much. I really pleased with it.
Of course. Do you have any
Okay.
question?
Yeah. What are the most skills should I do in the grade 11 to help me if I would like to join a medical college?
What? I'm sorry, I missed the first part. What?
What are the most skills should I do in the grade 11 to help me if I would join to medical college?
Okay, so in terms of skills, honestly, as a high school student, there's not much you can do. When you're applying to medical school, they focus more on what you've done during college, so during your undergraduate studies. So I wouldn't focus on, I wouldn't be doing anything right now, if that makes sense. That's not, I mean, in terms of like skills in general, I think it's nice if you maybe, find hobbies and excel in them. That would be good to do, because in your undergraduate studies and medical school, you're going to be so busy, but you also need an outlet outside of medicine. That's why it's really nice to have like a hobby or like a sport to have outside of medicine. So I don't think there's skills particularly that you can do now in high school, but I mean, hobbies is a great way to go about it.
Okay, amazing. Can I
Uh,
have
yeah.
one
I'm
question?
sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you tell me about the best universities for medical field?
The best residencies?
Yeah, universities.
Oh, universities. So in terms of medical school in the US, I guess you would have to define the best because, when you graduate from medical school in the US, all of the MD programs are accredited, right? Most of them. We're talking about like the general idea. And so when you're a physician, it doesn't matter where you went to school really, because everyone has the MD degree to them. So I would not focus on getting into a best university, whatever that means, but I would focus more on like getting into medical school because any medical school in the US is really good.
Yeah, okay, it's amazing. Thank you.
Of course. So now okay, my Mohammed can ask the next question. Here we go.
Hello. First, thank you a lot for your speech. It was really so nice. And secondly, here in Egypt, we have the undergrad. It's about 7 years to study medical. So I will take 7 years, then 4 years medical school outside. Do you get my point? I mean that here in Egypt, in college, if you decide to study medical, it takes 7 years. Then if I want to do a residence, will I get a board and go to 4 years medical school? It's like about 12 years studying medical.
So if you go to medical school in Egypt, you don't have to go to medical school again in the US if you want to practice in the US. So if you go to medical school in Egypt, I think around, since you said it's a 7-year program, maybe around your 5th or 6th year, start studying for US MLE Step 1 and Step 2 and apply for residency. Like I would apply for residency, even though I go to school here, if that makes sense. You don't have to repeat medical school twice. So after
Yeah,
your
but
7 years at Egypt, you can apply to residency in the US. Does that
okay,
make sense?
thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. So now let's have a question from Miven Emad.
Hi,
Hello.
hello. If I have a medical invention, but I want a doctor who guides me to write the scientific research for the invention, what can I do?
So if you need a physician to guide you, like I said, we have a mentoring platform. So you guys can, let me write it down in the chat, the website, f1doctors.com. So you guys can check out that platform and then choose a mentor for whatever, usually it's for us to help you through the process of applying to medical school. Nevertheless, if you have other questions that are related to medicine, like research, feel free to, first get a mentor and then ask them if they can, give you advice or help you or guide you in any way possible.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So let's have a question from who's raising their hand. Let's see. Is it Sarah Mohammed? I can't hear you. It looks like you're muted.
Okay, do you know information about the global singing schools?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Do you know information about the global singing schools?
No. I'm really knowledgeable about medical schools in the US only. Sorry. Let's have Basmala Husni for the next question.
Yeah, thank you so much for your great word. And I have a small question.
Go ahead.
Before you entered medical school, what books did you read that helped you develop your passion for medicine? I mean, are there books about medicine that you could recommend?
Do you mean books like in general, what books I read, or books that are medicine related?
You about medicine before entered the medical school.
Oh, okay. So there's a lot of good books out there. You can, simple Google search and just write books for pre-medical students, and you're gonna get a list of books that you can read that are very interesting and relevant to the medical field.
Yeah, thanks.
Of course. And now let's have a question from Alma Ahmed.
This is my voice clear?
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for your information and sharing with us your story. For my question, is there a definite number of activities or volunteering should I do?
So you can do as many activities as you want, but you can only write about a max of 15 on your application, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Now let's have Aladwa for the next question.
Hi,
Hello.
thank you so much for this great.
Of course.
I have two questions.
Mhm.
At first, can the high school students communicate F1 doctors to help them in doing research related to the medicine fields?
So currently we're not very much focused on research at F1 doctors. The reason is our hands are very tied and it's a very, very volunteering, like everything is a volunteer position at F1 Docs. But nevertheless, in the future, if we do, I will keep my contact info and you can reach out to me. But most of the people who are in our F1 Docs board are medical students or pre-medical students in the US. So if you want to help out, we actually have a tab that says for applications, you can apply there and you can help us in other ways.
Okay,
Well,
thank you so much. So,
of course.
do you have any another platform can help the high school students to make some research during the school before the medical school?
Okay. You're talking more about like scientific research.
Yes.
Okay, so that is I don't have any knowledge about that actually. I'm sorry. Because
no
I didn't do research in high school. I only started research, like I said, my sophomore year of undergrad here. So I'm not very familiar with, but I would ask, if you have any, your science teachers in high school would know that, I think can help you out with that. But in terms of like websites or platforms, I don't really know. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm really grateful.
But of course.
Okay.
So let's have a question from Elma Yahya.
Okay, please could you provide me with specific informations about Johns Hopkins University?
I'm sorry?
Johns Hopkins University.
I missed what you said before university.
Johns Hopkins.
Oh, Johns Hopkins? I'm not, well, Johns Hopkins is one of the medical schools that offer not only MD programs, but also MD PhD programs. I don't know much information because I didn't go there. So if you want more information, I would definitely check out their website or reach out to one of the people who are there. Well, if also we do have mentors from Johns Hopkins that study medicine there, so maybe you could reach out to them as well. Okay, so for the next question, let's have Malak Mohammed.
Okay, I just want to ask if I can do magister on US after end medical school in my country.
If you can do, I'm sorry, what was the first part?
Magister on US after end medical school in my country.
Magister means masters.
Okay. I thought. So in terms of like when you can do medical school in the US, it is not like most countries where you have to go straight out of high school. So actually, you in your country you can do a whole undergrad degree. You can do any degrees in anything. But when you come to the US, you just have to have a degree that is accredited by the US and apply for medical school and take your MCAT and everything. So there's not a certain age limit to go to medical school in the US. You can apply for medical school here when you're 35 or 40, 45, or you can apply when you're 21. Like there's not a specific age like most countries where you have to go to medical school after high school. Does that make sense? So there's no limit in that sense. You can get as many degrees as you want from anywhere as long as you have the prerequisite, as long as you go to the US and have your prerequisite classes, take your MCAT and everything that you need, and then you're okay.
Thank you.
Of course. So for the next question, let's have Mariam Ibrahim.
We're going to wrap up with this question, I think, if that sounds good with you.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, I just want to ask if there are there any scholarships in the US for us as international students to study medicine?
Okay, in terms of medical school, scholarships are very, very rare. So that is very, very difficult to get a scholarship. Nevertheless, when you get accepted to Ivy Leagues, for example, they do have the option of financial aid, and that could cover up to your whole tuition. So a lot of the schools actually provide financial aid, but the majority provide financial aid for US citizens. So to get a scholarship in the US as an international student is difficult, rare. but possible. Okay, so it's still possible to get that. I just want to be clear. Yep.
Thank you.
For anyone else who has a question, feel free to email me or reach out to me on social media. I'm probably quicker to answer on email. But yeah, here's my email. If I didn't get to your question, please email me or reach out to me on social media, whatever works for you.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing Fatima's contact information with all of you later in case you missed this slide here. So don't worry, we'll have all of this posted for you later, okay? All right, so that ends our guest speaker segment for today. But if everyone could please give Fatima a virtual round of applause via the reactions tab on Zoom, that would be lovely. Just to quickly say thank you to her for taking the time to come and speak to us. And then our participants will also be sending you some thank you notes a little bit later on as well.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was really a pleasure for me. Good luck with everything. You got this. Difficult to get into medical school as an international student, but it's nothing that hasn't been done before. Please use our F1 Doctors platform if you have any questions or look for a mentor there, but we're here for you. And yes, if you have any more questions like Davina just said, please reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help. It might take a few days sometimes for me to answer, but I will get to you as soon as I can. And good luck with everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
Of course.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch our attendance poll today. Please remember to fill out our guest speaker thank you forms if you ever have a chance. But the poll has been launched, so please answer that now. We'll leave it up for a minute. And then we will go over our research symposium prompts. It has finally been released. We're very excited to share it with all of you. And then we'll go over some medical specialties, do a little bit of practice triaging, and then we'll end with some medical procedures and common performances in medicine. Again, if you can't access the poll, please don't message the entire Zoom chat. Please message me individually on Slack. Okay, so I see that a lot of you have answered. Please keep your answers rolling in. I'm going to close it in a minute. And hope that you enjoyed Fatima's session. Her contact information, again, will be made available at the end. And if you are interested in reaching out to any of the guest speakers that have been here during the program since the beginning, all of their contact information has been updated in our program itinerary, so you can see it all there now. If you can't answer or if you can't see it, please feel free to message me on Slack and we will excuse you, but please make sure you message me now. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll in about 10 seconds.
Can you send the poll again?
I don't think we can send the poll again, but it's okay if you missed it. You can just message me on Slack and we'll excuse you. Okay, I'm gonna end it in 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right. Again, if you missed that, please message me ASAP on Slack. It is important that you message us as soon as you miss the poll so we know that you at least tried while it was active. Okay, so we'll start off by sharing our research symposium prompt with everyone. We're very, very excited. I'll send a link of our prompt or the link of our prompt in the chat right now. It's already available in our Google Drive, so please feel free to open it up. But I'll also share my screen and we can kind of discuss it or run through it a little bit. So for those of you that don't know, our research symposium is essentially a STEM and a medical-based competition that all of you have the chance to participate in after the program is done. So the reason we release it so late into the program is because we want you to focus on attending the sessions first. And then once you've kind of built up rapport with other members in the program, then we release this prompt so that you can have a chance to work collaboratively with people that you might have met while you've been here doing the program. Or if you want to work with people outside of MedStem Powered, then you can. You just have to ask us for approval. But this is just a really fun way for you to work on a collaborative project, and you are automatically considered for awards if you submit it by the deadline. We awarded nearly 50 submissions last year, or we received nearly 50, and we awarded about 25 to 30 of our submissions. And then the year before, we had a ton of submissions as well. A lot of people participate every year, and it's a really great way for you to showcase your creativity, your presentation skills. It's a great way to work on your scientific research skills as well. We think it's a wonderful opportunity, and we are here to help you every step of the way. So I can see that a lot of you are on this doc right now, so I'm just going to go through it briefly. First, I would like to let you know that if you would like more information about our research symposium prompt, or if you don't know how to get started on actually researching a topic, or you don't know how to read a scientific article, which is totally okay, we're going to be hosting a workshop tomorrow at 5:00 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So for reference, right now it's 10:00 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we'll send that Zoom information out on Slack, and we'll be there to help you get started with your research process, because we know it might be overwhelming, especially if you haven't done any kind of research before, as all of this will most likely be done online. So don't panic if you haven't done research before. It's okay. We'll be helping you out tomorrow. And then of course, after the program ends, we'll be helping you as well. So this year, our topic is our Medical Marvels Challenge. So last year, it was a climate change topic. And the year before that, we created our own virus or our own pandemic. And then we asked participants to devise a solution. So every year we release a prompt that's a little bit different about a medical challenge, and we ask you to help us solve it, or we ask you to help us make it better. So this year, it's our Medical Marvels Challenge, and this prompt was designed by our wonderful director, Thanuja, who was unfortunately unable to make it this morning, but she will be here tomorrow if you have any questions first. She did a wonderful job. So our topic this year is that despite many advancements in medical science and technology, we as humans continue to face a ton of global health challenges. Climate change has not been great for public health, with global temperatures on the rise and more frequent wildfires and deteriorating air quality. There's been an increase in heart disease, heart attacks, lung cancer, and stroke, and poor air quality has been associated with negative health effects in the long term. We also have increased antibiotic resistance, so the overuse and misuse of antibiotics in humans. We also have an increase of cardiovascular diseases that are responsible for taking away nearly 18 million lives every year, and it is the leading cause of death worldwide. So there are a ton of different kinds of heart disease, like supravascular disease, rheumatic disease, and so much more. And there are a lot of risk factors associated with this as well. And so these are only some of leading global causes of leading health crises. So what we would like you to do is to pick one of these global health crises and develop a solution to it, or try to help us with the prevention or the diagnostics or some aspect of this crisis, essentially just making it better. So what we're asking you to do is to pick one of these and then develop a very realistic and applicable solution. So it's going to focus on improving the prevention, diagnosis, treatment, or care stage of your global health challenge. And you have the opportunity to use whatever research has already been published about all these topics. So please be as creative as you possibly can. So we've listed some examples here. So one includes designing an innovative method for early cancer detection. So maybe you develop your own piece of technology that can help screen for cancer earlier, such as lung cancer, which is very prevalent. And of course, we're not asking you to actually build this device, but we're asking you to use previous research to make your best educated guess as to what a device would actually look like and how it would work functionally. So you don't have to actually build it. And we will be providing you with mentorship, so you can feel free to contact us if you are interested in being assigned a mentor, and they will be able to help you throughout your research process. You can choose to work on this individually. We would recommend that you do it collaboratively. We have a max of 10 members per group, but we would recommend that you stick to a max of maybe 5 or 6 students. We usually see that groups of more than 8 people don't tend to submit by the deadline. And once you found your group members, you just message us on Slack and we'll create a private channel for you so that your group members can work on it. Or if you want to go on Discord, we also have launched our Discord. So if you want to work there too, that's totally fine. Whatever works for all of you. You can even pick something that we haven't mentioned before. It really is just what works best for you and for your group members. So we have some requirements here. We'll go over this in more detail tomorrow. I'll also look at the chat and see if people have any questions. I don't think people have any questions right now. You cannot just submit past research. Someone asked, that's a good question. And you're definitely going to be using past research. So you'll definitely be referencing that and citing that in your presentation or your document or whatever, however you choose to submit your final submission. But it can't just be prior research. It has to be something new that hasn't been done already. So your solutions must be thought out. They must have a measure of real life applicability. Again, pulling from past research will help you with this tomorrow. We'll also be showing you some past submissions so you know what students have done previously for our other research symposiums. Again, you can't just present research on a topic that's already developed. That won't unfortunately work. You have to address both the pros and the cons of your solution. So how would you go about designing your project? How does it work? Do you foresee that there might be any limitations? Do you think finances will be an issue, etc.? How do you address these challenges if they arise? So what I'm talking about right now is our research symposium, for anyone that is interested. And this is optional. You do not have to do our research symposium. You don't have to participate in it. This is just for students that are really eager to get their hands into some research and to have the opportunity to compete for some awards and to present and to really work on those skills throughout the summer. So we recommend that you participate in a research symposium, but it is absolutely not required. We know that some of you have busy summers, so it's totally okay if you're unable to or if you're not interested. You also have to address your social and ethical challenges. So, what are the benefits and drawbacks for your solution? Do you actually think this is fair to people? Do you think it will be accessible? Is it too expensive? Can we not actually implement it? If you want to work with people again outside of MedSTEM Powered or our summer program participants, you do have to email us for approval. And then I also wanted to talk about something that's really important. So you must reference as much as possible. We do not tolerate any forms of plagiarism, either entirely or in part. This also includes things that are generated by AI. So we've seen a lot of participants this year submit homework and submit debate topics, or like sending us paragraphs or summaries about debate topics, even during the session too. And we have unfortunately seen participants before submit research symposium submissions, like presentations or docs, that have been taken from AI or are directly copy and pasted from a scientific article. If you do that, you will immediately be disqualified. All right, so what are your next steps? So after you're reading through this prompt, you're like, okay, I know what the topic is, I know what the question is, I know what they're asking of us. What do I do next? So you can attend our workshop tomorrow. We'll be posting a message on Slack to help you find team members. By Thursday, August 3rd, you have to message us with your team members, or if you plan on working individually, so we have a head count of how many people are participating. And then continue to work on your research projects until the deadline of August 18th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Our research symposium will be taking place on Saturday, August 19th at 9:00 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So it's definitely well past the end of our program. We're giving you lots of time to work on this because we know that a lot of you have busy summers and you might need to meet with your groups a lot. So we want to give you enough time to get comfortable with your research and feel confident in your submission. You can choose to participate live and present, but you don't have to. You just have to submit it if you'd like to be considered for awards. But we will be awarding the best spoken and the best presented groups. We always offer speaking awards, and it's really lovely to see everybody present their ideas during the submission. So we would encourage you to do it, but again, it is not required. We already have the submissions link live. You can submit in the form of a presentation, a pre-recorded video, a document, visuals and graphics. If you want to submit it in a form that we haven't already talked about, then you can email us for approval and we will let you know if that's okay. Okay, so I think that was everything that we wanted to talk about for the research symposium. Do people have questions about it right now? I'm happy to talk about some of your most answered questions or your most asked questions. I'll also scroll through the chat too. Again, a reminder to please not message on Zoom if you missed the poll. The poll has already passed, so please message me on Slack if you missed it. Yeah, Matt, what's up?
I know some people were having trouble understanding some of the materials on this doc. Hopefully by the end of day, we're gonna have our translations director translate this document.
Yes.
Just so anyone who needs that assistance will get that.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. I'll send the doc again in the chat in case anybody missed it. And it's already in our Google Drive as well if you need if you want to, follow along with us. Okay. A lot of people asking about the poll. Please message me on Slack. You don't have to submit the entire research symposium prompt by next Thursday. You just have to let us know who you're working with so we get a head count. It is optional, yes. We do take care of plagiarism. We run everything through plagiarism and AI checkers, so please don't do that. Deadline is August 18th. So we have a couple of different categories for awards. So once we release our rubric, you'll be able to see, but last year we gave out awards for biomedical solutions, for legal solutions, for political solutions, etc. So we'll have those different kind of categories this year, and then we'll be giving awards out as a third place, second place, first place basis for each of those categories. So what's the benefit of joining the research symposium? Oh, I think people have been answering that. Awesome. It's just a great way for you to get involved with doing research here and to be considered for some extra awards. Okay. So I think that was all of the questions that people were asking right now. So if you have more questions, don't worry, feel free to come to our research workshop tomorrow and we'll be able to answer more of those questions for you. But for right now, we will go into our medical specialties and our triaging workshop, and then we'll wrap up with Ahmad's workshop on medical procedures and surgical practices. Okay, so before we get started with our medical specialties, I know that we're interested in, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so I know that some of you were interested in being considered for a homework award, and I know that a lot of you participated in our debate last session. So our leadership team and our breakout room moderators, we discussed and we decided who our top debaters were in each of our rooms. And then I also read over all of the homework assignments that people submitted to me, and we gave out some shout outs according to what we read and according to who debated and presented the strongest arguments. So virtual drum roll, please. Thank you, Ahmad, I see you. But congratulations to our top interactive homework submissions. So Olivia and Emery Miles, congratulations. You did a wonderful job. and your homework assignments were amazing. And congratulations to everybody else that submitted their homework assignments as well. It was really wonderful to see all of you, really digging your feet into different research techniques in neuroscience and imaging, and you all did a wonderful job. So shout out to Olivia and Emery, but also shout out to everybody else too. You all did a great job. And then here are our top debaters from last session's debate. Congratulations to everyone that's mentioned here. We have Ali, Sama, Hajar, Mithra, Kazaya, Mayatri, Mariana, Emery, Mithin, Mena, and Asmani. So congratulations to our top debaters. We will be providing you with a debate participation award. And congratulations to everybody else that also participated. You all did a wonderful job. Okay, so now we'll go into our medical specialties. So a sample timeline for specializing in medicine includes 4+ years, and you take those years for undergrad, taking your pre-med courses, applying to med school, then maybe you take a couple years for your gap year, and then 4 years in medical school. So after medical school, you can specialize when you go into your residency. So we'll be talking about some of those specialties and residencies now. Okay, so what can you choose to specialize in? There are over 135 specialties and subspecialties. So there's really a lot that you can be choosing from. So first up, we have neurology. So we talked a little bit about neurology last Friday, and it's a specialty that pertains to the nerves and the nervous system. So neurologists are helping diagnose and treat conditions involving your brain and your spinal cord and your peripheral nerves and things like that. There are also subspecialties like child neurology, brain injury medicine, clinical neurophysiology, pain medicine, sleep medicine, and neurodevelopmental disabilities and childhood disorders. We have allergy and immunology. So specialists in these fields work with patients that have allergies or diseases of the respiratory tract. Then we have anesthesiology. So they help care for patients before, during, and after surgery, and they help administer anesthesia. We have dermatology. So they treat adults and pediatric patients with disorders of the skin, the hair, and the nails. This also includes skin cancer, tumors, diseases, and they can perform superficial procedures. Next up, we have diagnostic radiology. So diagnostic radiologists are trained to diagnose patients through using imaging techniques like X-rays, sound waves, ultrasounds, and or MRI techniques. And there are a ton of different subspecialties here. Usually subspecialties take additional time after you've completed your 4 to 6 to 8 year residency, but sometimes they might be included in it. It depends on which subspecialty you're interested in. Then we have emergency medicine. So these are physicians specializing in providing care for adult and pediatric patients in emergency situations. So like working in an ER once patients arrive to the emergency department. There's some subspecialties here as well. We have family medicine. So they focus on the patient as a whole. There are a couple of different subspecialties working in adolescent medicine, geriatric medicine, hospice and palliative medicine, pain, sleep, and sports medicine as well. Sports medicine is included in a lot of these. Next up, we have internal medicine. So internists are physicians that treat diseases of the heart, blood, kidneys, joints, digestive, respiratory, and vasculatory systems. So they're trying to provide long-term care, and they can address disease prevention and wellness as well. Next up, we have medical genetics. So medical geneticists are physicians that treat hereditary disorders and diseases caused by genetic defects or mutations. They can also serve as consultants for patients and their families. So sometimes you might visit a medical geneticist because a disease that is gene associated, it has been found in some of your family members, and you might want to know if you're at risk for this as well. So they'll be able to help you out with that. We have nuclear medicine, so they use radioactive materials to diagnose and treat diseases like hyperthyroidism, thyroid cancer, tumors, and bone cancer. Then we have OBGYNs. They're caring for individuals like females, and they can take care of gynecologic care, oncology, surgery, labor and delivery, and they're often working with other people in the healthcare system as well, like most, if not all, of our other physicians. We have ophthalmology. So physicians specializing in this field, they're taking care of patients that might have issues with their eyes or related vision problems. Then we have pathology. So pathologists are studying the nature of diseases. So they're running clinical lab tests. They're examining tissues, cells, body fluids, and they might also examine fetal tissue. We have pediatrics. So you might have seen your pediatrician growing up, going in for your annual checkup. So they're working with patients from infancy to adolescence, and they can also diagnose childhood diseases as well. We have physical medicine and rehabilitation. So these physicians are helping patients with disabilities involving maybe their brain, spinal cord, nerves, joints, ligaments, bones. They might be working with athletes that might have some sports-related injuries, and they're just working to improve patient quality of life. We have preventative medicine. So they're working in fields like clinical medicine, biostatistics, epidemiology, and health services management to help figure out how we can prevent diseases from spreading and how we could potentially prevent disorders from becoming more severe. We have psychiatry, which is different from neurology because psychiatrists, they devote their careers to helping patients that have issues with mental health, and they're trying to find connections between genetics and the environment and mental illness, and can conduct these psychological tests and administer drugs. So an important difference between psychiatrists and psychologists is that psychiatrists are allowed to prescribe drugs. Then we have general surgery. So some people might choose to specialize in just general surgery, or you could further specialize in plastic surgery, oral surgery, pediatric surgery, thoracic surgery, and there are a couple others mentioned here as well. Okay, so now we'll do some quick triaging. So does anybody know what triaging is? You can mention it in the chat if you'd like. And no worries if you don't know what triaging is. I opened the chat back up, so if you want to type anything in there, feel free to. I'll wait a couple more seconds and then we'll move on. Attending to patients, yeah. Definitely has something to do with the medical field for sure. Kenzie, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think it means like when there's a huge disaster, how we arrange the patients to take by priority to save a lot of survivors.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm seeing this in the chat too. We're trying to visit our patients on the basis of their injuries, looking for signs of serious illness. Exactly, yeah. Great job, everybody. So triaging is essentially a process used by hospitals and emergency rooms to determine the order in which patients should be treated based on the urgency and the severity of their conditions. So it's usually used when there are a large number of patients that need to be treated, like during busy hospital hours or mass casualty incidents. So these are the general triage categories you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. We have unsalvageable in black, so the patient is not breathing and essentially deceased. And it is believed that no amount of medical attention would be expected to restore signs of life. We have critical in red, so it's life-threatening and the patient is severely unstable and they must be seen immediately. They could be unresponsive or in respiratory distress. We have emergent in orange, which is potentially life-threatening, and they should be seen as soon as possible, but it might not immediately be life-threatening yet. We have urgent in yellow, where the condition is acute, but not necessarily severe. So they should be seen urgently, as in 30 minutes to a few hours, and they may require some testing or medication, but they're often discharged after receiving medical attention. And then we have non-urgent or the walking wounded, which is in green. So the condition is pretty stable and not severe, and the patient doesn't need to be seen quickly. It often really requires minimal to no testing and medication. They're really expected to be discharged after receiving medical attention as well. Okay. So at the scene of a natural disaster, a 14-year-old male walks into the emergency tent with a broken arm. Patient's vital signs are all normal, and all other extremities are undamaged. The patient is fully aware of the situation and does not appear to be in any distress. So what category should we put them in? Black, red, orange, yellow, or green? Feel free to use the chat. I'll give everyone a second. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of green, yellow, orange. Nobody's thinking red or black. That's good. So this category is green. So this patient would be tagged as non-urgent because he's walking around the scene and there's only one singular injury. He would be referred to as the walking wounded, which falls under our green category. All right, so scenario number 2, at the scene of a natural disaster, 73-year-old man is found lying under debris with several lacerations showing on his outer body. And additionally, brain matter is visible on the top of his head. The patient is unresponsive. What category do we put this patient in? I'm seeing a lot of red. Yeah, some of you are saying black, and black is actually correct. So this patient would be tagged as unsalvageable because he suffered from a wound that no individual can unfortunately survive given our medical knowledge now. Because we see brain matter, we assume that the patient is deceased. Okay, so patient 3. A police officer is wheeled into the emergency room with a gunshot wound in her left shoulder. The bullet is suspected to remain in the body, and the patient complains of a tingling in her left arm, and blood loss is very significant. Patient now begins to shift in and out of consciousness. They have a history of deep vein thrombosis, and they take Coumadin, which is a blood thinner, and the police officer also states that she smokes daily. So what category should this individual or this patient be placed in? I'm seeing lots of red, orange, okay. Red, lots of red and orange, okay. Yes, so it would be red. So this would be tagged as critical. So if she suffered a major wound that is life-threatening, if it's left untreated, and during triage, a patient's medical history is also taken into account, and her history of taking blood thinners and smoking further could increase her risk of serious complications from her injury. So care must be given immediately. Great job, everyone. Oops. I might have spoiled it, but patient number 4 is a 57-year-old female that enters the emergency room on a wheelchair with a deformed tibia and fibula. The patient cannot walk on her own and states that she has some ongoing pain in the affected area. So the patient's vital signs are normal and she does not appear to be in any distress. So what category should she be tagged in if you didn't see it already? Yeah, I'm seeing lots of yellow. So yes, the patient would be tagged as urgent, not labeled as walking wounded because she cannot walk, but is mentally aware and is responsive to pain. So it's not right now life-threatening, but patients should still be seen swiftly because it could become life-threatening. Okay, so a family shows up to the emergency room with their 4-month-old daughter who consumed half a bottle of aspirin pills. She apparently climbed out of the portable crib during nap time and somehow reached an open bottle of baby aspirin. So the patient or the baby is quiet and the breathing is very shallow. Quick pulse changes are noted and the patient is drooling and has occasional tremors or convulsions. So what category should we put this patient in? I'm seeing a lot of red, orange or red. Yes, so it would be red. They would be the patient would be tagged as critical because there's shallow breathing and convulsions, and it's clear that because the baby consumes so many pills, the baby must be treated immediately. Chemical toxicity, especially for newborns, must be handled swiftly to make sure that we care for the baby in the long term. Okay, patient 6. At the scene of a mass casualty earthquake, 35-year-old man is found with no apparent injuries. He does not seem to have a pulse and is unresponsive to commands and questions. What category do we put this person in? Seeing black, orange, red. Yeah, great job, everyone. So we would unfortunately put this patient in black because since this is a mass casualty incident with many individuals that need medical attention, resuscitation probably cannot be performed. All right, so a 16-year-old male shows up to the emergency room with second and third degree burns across 80% of his body. Patient's vitals are slightly elevated and he's slipping in and out of consciousness. What category do we tag this patient in? Seeing a lot of red, black, red, orange. Okay, so we're sticking around the black, red, orange categories. Yeah, so sorry, my slides are working a little bit slowly today. So yeah, so it will be tagged as orange or yellow, either works. So because the burns are life-threatening, the patient is not tagged as critical. It should be seen swiftly, but it's okay if it's immediate. All right, so that was the end of our triaging workshop. I hope you enjoyed it, and these slides will be available on Slack after the end of the session, so don't worry if you missed anything. You can catch up on all of it later. So now Ahmad will do his medical practices and surgical procedures workshop. So feel free to tune in for that. And we'll have a poll at the end of the session as well for our second attendance. So please make sure you stay for that. And I'll hand it over to Ahmad now.
All right, thank you everyone for joining in today. I'm gonna do our, just a reminder, make sure to stay on mute whenever a host is presenting, just so we can keep it as a great experience for everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get started. So today I'm just gonna go over some common medical procedures and go over how they work and kind of just give y'all an overview. I think they're pretty cool and pretty interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna do some common procedures in medicine. First off, we're gonna review a procedure we talked about last week. We talked about phlebotomy, and if everyone knows, phlebotomy is a procedure in which a needle is used to take blood from a vein and used for laboratory testing. What's it called? If you have a question, please leave it in chat and then I'll get to it as soon as possible. Again, we talked about the preferred vein choices. This is supposed to be medial. I think there's a typo on my end. I'm sorry about that. But there's usually 3 veins that you see in the AC area, the antecubital fossa area, and you have the medial vein, you have the cephalic vein, and you have the basilic vein. Let's see what you all remember. What is the first choice of vein? Which one should we go for? If you are drawing blood, which one is the first choice? Is it the medial, is it the cephalic, or is it the basilic? Okay, so the cephalic, I see cephalic. The median cubital is the one that I personally think is the most preferred vein choice. Again, different textbooks have different perspectives on this, but the median vein is usually very, very plump, and it's the one right in the middle, and it doesn't have nerves surrounding it. So basilic would be your last choice. The medial and cephalic, it's been debated which one is like the first preferred vein choice. You can go for either or both, but I personally, from what I've seen in patients, the medial is easier to find, and it's just it's not close to the basilic vein at all. Again, you see this basilic vein is right here in this patient. and then you have the median cubital vein or the median vein, and then you have the cephalic. As you see, cephalic is like the farthest away from the basilic vein. So again, depending on the pattern of veins in the patient, you might go for the cephalic. Again, if you see one is more plump than another, I'd go for the one that's more plump. So median cubital vein is kind of the same thing as your medial vein. There's some alternative ways to say it, and so I call it the median vein, but I know others call it the median cubital vein. So yeah, so there are three major veins. Again, median is the one that I go for as like my first choice, and then I go to the cephalic and the basilic because they're usually the easiest to see. Basilic is your last choice, so I'd rather go on the hand, near the hand first. Just my preference. Again, phlebotomist, this is, again, they draw a CBC, which can show the white blood count, which can determine if an infection is present. So here's one way why we draw, a complete blood count on a patient. It is like the first kind of first stage of developing a differential diagnosis for patients, and they come into the emergency room or they need to know what's going on in their bodies. And yeah. So again, phlebotomy, again, we talked about this procedure really in depth last week. I showed you some of my supplies, what angle we go at, and how it kind of looks like inside the vein and that anatomically. As you can see, there's a specific angle that is used. You got to use a tourniquet. You go into the vein, you get a blood flow. If you don't get blood flow, you try again, and that's okay. I don't want to spend since we have already went over this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it today, but if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. If I didn't get to your question last week, or that you still are wondering something, I'll check the chat now. I'll keep the chat open so I can see. So yeah, the next thing we're going to talk about today is an appendectomy. So an appendectomy is when a surgeon makes an incision in the lower right part of your abdomen and remove the appendix. If you break down the medical terminology, you can also figure out what this means, appendectomy. So feel free to do that and write your answers in the chat if you want to break down the word to its roots. A surgeon makes an incision in the lower right side of the abdomen. Again, this is an anatomical position. So I think we have some diagrams showing what that looks like as well. But if we don't, if you have questions on what anatomical position is, we can talk about that as well. So the appendix is removed and then the wound is closed with stitches. So some people are wondering what the purpose of it is. Sometimes your appendix gets swollen and it can lead to it potentially rupturing. So you have to get it removed then. When I was in first grade, I had my appendix removed. Good, tomi means cutting. That's the medical terminology. Look at y'all, so smart. Yeah, an appendectomy is used to remove the appendix. So your appendix might, based on your current health, or maybe just because, like I know, like my whole family, I think almost everyone has their appendix removed, but it just swells up sometimes, and it causes uneasy pain, and then you should feel the pain on the lower right area of your abdomen, in that quadrant, and you should go to the doctor because it's an emergent situation, because if it ruptures, it releases bacteria into your stomach, and that's not healthy. So yeah. So the kind of how it looks like, what the steps are, the surgeon's first going to make that lower cut in the right side of the abdomen. The incision is usually less than 3 inches in length. And this is the, what's it called? This, I think I'm going to show you today, this procedure is the laparoscopic approach. But now, because technology has advanced, surgeons really don't need to do anything but make a little cut, and then they can use a machine, a robot, to guide them and remove the appendix. So again, it is very convenient now, and based on a couple of years ago, the technology has advanced. So the surgeon, once they've opened the patient, they're going to conduct an internal examination of the patient. And during this step, all the organs in the abdomen are identified and checked for any disease or abnormalities. And if you are in very severe, like your appendix has ruptured and bacteria has been introduced to your stomach, the physician or the surgeon has to remove that bacteria. Usually, if you catch it early, you don't have to do the you don't have to have all that. The bacteria is usually safe. Oh, okay. Did y'all my screen stop loading? Okay. Once this has been completed, the medical examination has been done. The appendix is located and brought up to the surface of the body. It is separated from the surrounding tissue and cecum and then removed from the body. Again, once the appendix has been removed, the cecum is closed and returned to the abdomen, and then the muscles are sewn back together, and your appendectomy has been completed. It's not a really difficult procedure. It's really simple. I think the steps are pretty simple for surgeons. But again, nowadays it's done laparoscopically, which means it's just through a machine. So it's even more simpler, and it doesn't require a lot of these steps. But I think it's really important to know what you need to know how to do it non-laparoscopically, just in case you don't have those machines available. Yeah. The next procedure or medical procedure we'll talk about today is a thoracotomy. And this is when a cut is made between the ribs to see and reach the lungs or other organs in the chest or thoracic area. And it is usually performed on the left or right side of the chest. And a thoracotomy, it can be done for a lot of procedures. It can be done in a code blue. It can be done whenever the patient's heart has stopped and they want to physically massage the heart. It is done, if there's a collapsed vein, a blood clot, you want to repair the heart, repair the diaphragm, remove a cyst, remove part of your chest wall. There's a lot of ways, there's a lot of reasons a thoracotomy is done. And as you can see here, usually I'll go over the procedure. The reason you're doing this is you're going to make cuts near the rib, under the ribs, in the thoracic area. And again, that opens up the whole view. You can see the heart, you can see the lungs. So it's a very critical procedure when there's like a medical emergency or they need to access the heart or lungs. Again, this procedure usually takes 3 to 4 hours, but in a medical emergency, it might be in a compressed way. They might do it in a way that's faster and not as detailed if they need to get access to it right away. But usually the surgeon will start with a cut around 6 inches long on the left or right side, just below the tip of your shoulders, in this area. They're gonna make a cut. And once the surgeon has reached the desired ribs, they will cut further until they have enough room to work. Again, this might be different for everyone. And once finished, the surgeon will put the tubes to drain the fluids or air. If that is the reason the surgeon open your chest up, that might build up in your chest, and another will let your medical team give you medicine. So yeah, there might be chest tubes placed in to ensure your lungs can still work and your heart can beat. Yeah. So that's the thoracotomy. That is also a common medical procedure. I'll check the chat just in case there's any questions I missed. Again, I'll send all these slides out after the meeting. And again, as always, if you have questions, Slack is the best place to ask them on the Connect channel. The next emergency medical procedure or a procedure that can be done is called the intubation. And this is when you place a tube down the mouth of a patient into the airway to help move air in and out of the lungs. This process can save someone's life when they're not able to breathe on their own. In code, whenever you go to a code, sometimes when the patient is, and we talked about code blues last week, this is a common procedure done there in that setting as well. Whenever a patient can't breathe by themselves, they need to be placed on a machine to help them breathe. Yeah. So what does it mean to be intubated? Again, when does someone need to be intubated is when there's an airway obstruction, when there's cardiac arrest, and when there's injury or trauma to your neck, abdomen, or chest that affects the airway. Anything that's affecting the airway and you can't breathe on your own, so you'll be intubated. The process is, I don't know if you've seen this before, but there's a laryngoscope that is used and an endotracheal tube is inserted down your windpipe into your lungs, not into your lungs, but into the trachea. And this tube is placed and you're usually put on a monitor that can be seen. A laryngoscope is kind of plugged into a monitor so the patient can find your airway and place this tube down your throat into the trachea. Again, there's other ways you can do this as well. I've seen it go down the nose as well. But the endotracheal approach is the approach that we're going to talk about today. But yeah, that is how you intubate a patient. Again, the specific steps, I recommend you all, there's a video on YouTube that is really detailed that kind of shows this on a dummy. I can link that today too, if anyone is interested in watching how someone is intubated. It's a life-saving procedure, and when you first look at it, it can be really scary, but you practice a lot when you go to medical school, or if you do a program where you can, I know a couple programs that offer like this medical skills training practice, where you can actually intubate a dummy and learn how you do it, and use the monitor to view the trachea and place that tube down the dummy's throat. So that is really good training to know how to do, because this again is a life-saving procedure. And then another procedure we talked about today is a free skin graft. And this is the process used to repair holes and defects in different parts of the bodies by using skin. So the grafts kind of are placed in a new area that is being repaired. And these grafts are called like free grafts because they are taken separately from different parts of the body. This is pretty much whenever you're taking like different skin from different parts of the body to repair, a certain part that is damaged. Yes. Any questions? No questions. Does anyone know the medical instrument that is used to take a skin graft? We'll talk about it now, but I'll see if anyone knows in the chat. Okay, we'll move on. I'll let you know later. The question was, does anyone know which medical instrument is used to take a skin graft? I'll let you know the answer now. So the answer is a dermatome. So this is a surgical instrument that produces thin slices of skin from a donor area to be transferred to the area of interest. Perfect. A dermatome that needs to be repaired. And this is used commonly in the procedure called the free skin graft. And now we're going to kind of go over some common medical machines that you might see in a hospital. An MRI, which stands for magnetic resonance imaging, and this is kind of uses radio waves to create really, really detailed views of your bones, tissues, and organs. I'm going to actually show you all a picture in a couple minutes, kind of comparing side by side the other common machine used for imaging, a CT scan, and the difference in how they look on a film, and how they differ. So again, MRIs are usually used for tumors, to diagnose breast cancers, liver disease, give a detailed view of the brain, and again, they're really, really detailed views. And again, you're placed into this machine. It's really, really scary from what I've heard. I think I had a couple of family members who've had an MRI done before, and they say like it's really like, because you're completely put in a box and you're completely like layered into a machine, and it can be really scary. But it gives you a really detailed view of your tissues and organs, and it usually takes longer than a CT scan. Again, CT scans are they're again also referred to as CAT scans, and they use X-rays to create cross sections of your body. And CT scans use radiation, while MRIs do not. A major difference between them. And CT scans are usually quick and non-invasive, and are preferred in emergency situations because it's really quick. And this can kind of tell you it can give you a look into circulation problems, head conditions, lung issues, and other common medical emergencies. Again, they're used for emergency situations because it gives you a really, really quick look into what's going on. Can you spot the difference? As you can see, this is the same side-by-side picture of, I believe, the spine, the lower spine, I believe, or the middle of the spine. As you can see the difference, their MRI is really, 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 really detailed, while the CT scan kind of gives you a big overview of what's going on, if there's an abnormality present. But can you spot the difference? Again, there's no difference in resolution. Again, there is a big difference in resolution, but there is, it's just how the scan is given based on a CT scan versus an MRI. The technologies are different. The CT scans, the bones are like not that white, right? They're very subdued. They're very kind of pale kind of looking. And then MRI scan is very, very, very like clear of what's going on. That's why it's preferred, but it takes longer to do an MRI than it does a CT scan. That's why your MRI is not preferred for emergency situations. The CT scan is. I know I skimmed through that. I gave you a large scale overview because I know I wanted to be respectful of everyone's time today. So if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And we will. Why would one do a CT scan when you can do an MRI? Because CT scans are faster, they're more quicker. So in emergency situations, you don't have time to go into an MRI machine. You want to be able to just quickly get a scan so the doctor knows what's going on. It's just more quicker. And as technologies develop, there might be a way to do an MRI really, really quickly as well. So it just depends on the situation you're in. And you might not have a time to do an MRI. So I think that's one of the major differences in CT scan versus an MRI. The poll is going to be sent out real soon. And yeah, timing also CTs for emergency situations. Great job. Yeah, so if anyone has questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, and we'll also talk about them on Slack if you have any questions. I don't know, I got a little, I've had a couple DMs come about certain, like where the Google Drive is and stuff, and we can share that as well as soon as the session is over on the Slack channel. So we'll do that. All righty, so 1 second. I know there's 18 people in the waiting room, and I will do that now. Give me 1 second, I'm trying to. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I'm gonna admit everyone. Okay. If you have a question, again, I'll end the session now. I'll do a poll real quick. Let me see if it works for me. No?
Can I leave now?
Yes. Oh, give me 1 second. Let me try to figure out the poll situation. I think Davina had to leave a little early this morning today. We'll do a poll. Give me 1 second. You know what? We won't have another poll today. So no worries about that. We will end there. The poll is not working for me, unfortunately. So we will we will stop the poll. We won't have to do a poll today. We'll end the session now. So feel free to hop off if you don't have any questions. The session has officially ended. There is no second poll today. I will let Davina know that I was not able to, for some reason, launch a poll. But no worries, we'll make sure that everyone has access. Everyone gets credit if you have joined and have stayed the appropriate number of time and answered poll 1. There isn't a poll. There was a poll.
So we can leave now, right?
Yes, you may leave now. The session has.
Okay, and there isn't any second poll.
There is not any second poll.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Bye.